They told me it was on. Well, if you haven't figured it out yet, I am not Erik. I am Gloria Kondrup, and I'm the executive director, as Petra said, of the Hoffmitz Milken Center for Typography at Art Center College of Design. We've been open 10 months. And the mission of the center is to advance and elevate typography from analog through digital technologies. I know it's a lofty goal, but we'll try. But what's more relevant to today's talk is I'm also the director of Archetype Press at Art Center College of Design, and I've been a letterpress printer for 25 years. It's an integral study at Art Center letterpresses, and it's part of our typographic curriculum. Now, I can understand if you might not know who I am, and this is meant for the 1% of you in the audience who you have no idea who Erik is. But if you're a typographer and graphic designer and do not recognize the name Erik Spiekermann, then where have you been for the past 30 years? Again, I'm going to go through this really fast for those of you who are not familiar with Erik. Erik has been and continues to be one of the most important contributors, I love this, and change makers in the field of type design, typography, and graphic design. He was one of the co-founders of the international firm Meta Design and the co-founder of Font Shop. He is also the author, along with E.M. Ginger, of Stop Stealing Sheep and Find Out How Type Works. And there's really another phrase that Stop Stealing Sheep ends with, but I'm not going to go there. He is also, if you don't know, the designer or co-designer of 25 different typefaces, including Meta. And I say this with a lot of love for you, Erik. It's been coined the Helvetica of the 1980s. Officina, FF Transit, and FF Info. Erik first started his career as a compositor, and then working under the legendary Gunther Gerhard Lange at the H. Berthold Type Foundry. His intention of establishing his own letterpress and graphic design company in London was short-lived after a fire consumed his printing shop while in storage. That was 1977. Sorry to bring back terrible memories. So, what is Erik doing now? For over 25 years, like other designers, all of us, he was consumed by, you might say, digital typographic choices afforded to him, spending hours and hours adjusting the tiniest details of size, spacing, in characters or alternate character choices. Now, 40 years later, or almost 40 years later, after he first used a composing stick, he's now applying his ideas and using his, I would say, extraordinary typographic skills to define a new landscape of letterpress printing in the digital age. Yet Erik's return to analog technology is not steeped in traditional methods, but rather he utilizes components of both older and newer technologies. He explores the hybrid effects of these technologies on design, in printing of posters, books, large format posters, I should say, and uses contemporary digital typefaces cut from wood and other materials by CNC routers, lasers, and 3D printers. This is his letterpress studio, Galerie P98a in Berlin, and I have to say, it's magnificent. He has an incredible family here. He has more than 500 cases of wood types ranging in sizes from 8 to 60 point Cicero, which is the equivalent of a line or a pica, a little about 7% larger than that. Typefaces such as the original wood type Fanfare, designed by Louis Oppenheim in 1927. Other family members in his studio would include his Oppenheim's low type, which, by the way, in 1980, Erik did reintroduce with additional weights for photo typesetting. and it's still in use today. And I just threw this in because I happen to like the grotesque inline typeface. Erik also has about 450 cases of foundry type from 6 to 96 point. And what's really interesting about working typographically in a foundry is in letterpress, your access to your storage of your type, it's very limited. There's no longer an infinite number of letters available for composing. You know, your type is organized in drawers. This is your font organizer. And the glyphs at your disposal maybe number in a few dozen, not the hundreds. So the constraints put on by letterpress is determined by the materials that you have. This is your design program, which is basically upside down, left to right, sideways, this way. All of a sudden, your white empty spaces are replaced with leads, quads, riglets, spaces, and furniture. But modern technology, and I think this is one of the reasons why we'll ask Erik, modern technology has allowed Erik to accurately translate his contemporary digital typefaces, such as FF Real, into wood type for letterpress printing. He's now able to work with his hands again, be extremely precise. You get your letter forms and your hands covered with red ink. And virgin white paper is your new indulgence. What I like about Erik's re-entry into letterpress printing is that he still maintains, or he has brought back, the ethics of typography, using both the original foundry wood type, and also designing new wood types, such as this is his arts that he designed for the Hamilton Wood Type Museum. He uses the constraints of letterpress to construct a message, words on a specific piece of paper, of a specific size and dimensions, exactly where he wants them. So he's returned letterpress back to the typographer and out of the hands of the hobbyist. And if you don't read German, hopefully I got this right, Erik, everything is finished, it only needs to be done. I call these like Erik's truisms. Complex problems have simple, easy, or have simple, easy to understand wrong answers. I don't have to say this. Start reading, start Googling. This, to me, is almost a contradiction. Move fast and get shit done. In letterpress, there's no such thing as moving fast. Everything is slowed down. Everything takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of patience. And I just want to play this short video for you so you get an idea of the kind of effort it takes to create a two-color print on a very fabulous old press. It's pretty explanatory. And there is sound. please welcome Erik to the stage with me. Turn it on. So,
I am turned on. Are you turned on?
I'm turned on. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. Yes, I am turned on. I'm turned on by that large printing press. Unfortunately, that's what turns me on. Erik, are you crazy? Why at this moment decide to get your hands full of ink again?
I don't really know. I know that what happened is what happened before, and there's a few people here who I could blame or thank for this. I'm very good at starting things, and I'm really bad at finishing, so I've always employed, hired, used other people. Petra talked about this. There's a couple other people here. I know I saw Erik from Block and I saw Just last night. All these people ended up cleaning up my mess, essentially, because I start something and then I either get bored or I get out of my depth. It's too much, and then these guys have finished it for me. I mean, half of my typefaces would only have 1 or 2 weights if it hadn't been for Erik or Just or other people. Ferdinand, my assistant here, sort of cleans up after me, as it were. So that's both my strength and my weakness. And I started this whole letterpress thing because I didn't finish it. As you said, I was going to be a letterpress printer in the 70s, and it burned down. And then when I sort of neared retirement, which is officially I'm retired, I thought, it'd be nice to pick up again. So I bought this press, and then I bought another press, and then I bought another press, and then everybody in Germany know that I'm the crazy guy who buys these presses. Now I buy a press a week, and all this old type, and now they know that I collect this old type, and then we found these people out in the other shop in Berlin, and now I'm part of that biz. So I don't know. I started it. I have no idea where it's going. I have no plan. And it is slow, as you've noticed.
It's very slow. And I think, it's kind of interesting, Erik, when I ask, why are you doing this? Because, in the United States, for instance, letterpress has almost been captured by the hobbyist. And I think it's it's refreshing to see that you approach it from, again, a typographic approach. It's not about making cutesy, pretty things. It's about the message on the paper. Do you think, had you had your letterpress earlier and it didn't burn down, do you think it would have changed your type designing aesthetic?
No, probably not, because as you pointed out, the first faces I sort of brought back into photosending were all letterpress fonts anyway, because I had them in metal before it burned down, and I was interested in, what would these look like, move them over into the new technology. And as many people here know, type design is all about constraints. I mean, these days you can design anything really, but using type is all about constraints. You do it for a client, you do it within a technical framework, you have the page, whatever page it is, the moving page or the stationary page to work within. You have a certain, an A has to look like an A if we're looking at the Latin alphabet. So it's all about constraints and working for other people. A type designer doesn't work for him or herself. He makes a tool that other people use. And the same goes for here. So what interested me now is interested me then. What can we do within the constraints? Like you said, there is furniture, there are fixed spaces, and I haven't had all the opportunities to do anything in 2,480 or 1,000 units. Now to go back and saying, you can't track. You can't kern.
No
well, you can kern, but you need a saw, and it's dirty, and you cut your fingers, and it's bloody, and it damages the type, so you don't kern. You think, why did God ever invent kerning? It's totally rubbish. Let's track instead. So I like the constraints, and you can't just, mouse it down from 16 to 15. You get 16, then you go down to 12 if you're lucky. And then you run out of lowercase e's, and you have to change the copy. And I kind of like those constraints, because our other work, as we heard about today the other day about the new variable type format, which is fantastic. I welcome it as a type designer, but it opens up more choices. And I want my life in my last, few decades to be about fewer choices. It's much easier to only have, one yogurt in the fridge and only 2 potatoes and 1 egg than having, the whole department store at your deposit, because then I never know what to fucking eat. So, and I'm here with the same, I have what we have, and it's interesting to make something from that.
I'm not exactly sure I believe you, Eric.
I'm not sure I might believe it either, but I have
I
to
you
make
know,
up some sort of rationale why the fuck I'm doing this. But
No, I don't believe it, because technology today allows you to cut new types for letterpress.
yeah, but they still have to fit onto a square.
They still have to
or
fit
rectangle.
into whatever size press that you're working with, but I know that you can work the technology so that if you need something designed or something cut, it'll happen.
Yeah, but that's exactly what we've been doing over the last 40, 50 years.
Right.
We've always had a certain. I started in metal type, then I went to the photo setting where I spent 25 years of my life and until the mid 80s, and there were constraints there, and now we have the same constraint, but now we can do 3D printing. We can cut in wood, we can cut into a formica, we can cut into plexiglass, we can make new letterpress type. Letterpress, the only constraint is that you're printing from a raised surface with ink. And you can't even get letterpress ink anymore. We have to make our own letterpress ink because offset ink is way too thin and slimy. You need what we call shorter ink. So to use that technology that we have, that I can manipulate a typeface, I can, for example, make, as I did with arts, alternate characters. So I can actually justify again like we used to do. I find that very interesting how we bring our digital knowledge into this medium, because ultimately, and that's what we're trying to do, we are making digital plates for letterpress without negatives. Letterpress printing has something that offset printing or digital printing hasn't got. It has that impression, that three-dimensional feel. It looks nicer. It appeals more to us because it's three-dimensional. And if I can combine digital and analog, then I'm adding something that has got lost over the last, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, it's gotten lost. And the other component you're adding now, Eric, and this is interesting. I mean, here you are amongst your peers and people who are typographers and type designers, and, they understand, and everyone has an opinion and judgment about, what one might do as a typographer. Now you've entered another realm of printing. And now you're entering a realm of printers who will look at your work not only from a typographic point of view, but from a printing point of view.
Yeah, but I mean, it's again always been the case, maybe not so much for type designers, but we can't be made responsible for what people do with our work. If
Right.
if you design a typeface, anybody can destroy it, put it in the wrong size, the wrong weight, the wrong environment. But I like to take responsibility, sort of go back to, to be responsible, not just for the tool, but also for the object that gets made with the tool. I think that's what the interesting part. Yes, I will have printers look at the stuff, and they have different eyes, and that is dangerous, because I'm not very experienced as a printer. I'm a compositor and a type designer and a graphic designer. But I still find that interesting, because ultimately we are part of a network of skills, of people that have to take responsibility. I mean, if I'm part of designing a website, I can't get out of it saying, well, they used the wrong resolution or they wrote the wrong code. No, I think I need to be in that team and make sure that everybody in the team is up to speed. And there is no more obvious teams than in letterpress printing, where you have the chain of people from the author to the bookbinder. I mean, people always say, I wrote a book. No, you don't write a book. You write a text. Then somebody lays it out, then somebody edits it, then somebody corrects it maybe, then somebody types it, and then somebody corrects it again, then somebody makes a plate, then somebody prints it, then somebody binds it, la-di-la-di. There's a dozen people involved, and people forget. And that's one of, I've taken this task, as it were, upon me to impress, for example, onto the publishing world. Look, guys, we are all necessary for us to make, dare I say, books, or of course, you're not going to letterpress websites anytime soon. Who knows? But I find that important to because people have forgotten. They think you write a book and bingo, it's out there, and then of course it's free because it just came out of your brain and you can download it like everything else. You can't download this shit. It's all 2 tons. You try to download a fucking printing press. You need 5, 6 people and major trucks. I have downloaded most of those presses, but
It's
heavy.
It's and again,
Downloading type is also heavy.
I know. Trust me. I know. I'm one of the few people in this room who have downloaded type. I know it's hard for you to believe, but yes, Eric will testify to you that I can work a printing press. But that's very interesting that you want to go back to the physicalness of it. I think, and I'm not quite sure if anyone else in the room has done this. I mean, why do you think? I mean, is it because we're so involved in a digital environment that going back to the physicalness of printing fulfills a need?
I don't
I
care
don't
about
know.
anybody else. I certainly know that we still eat. We still, eat more than pills. We still make our food, and there is this. We have a great German word, the Verlangsamung, the slowing down. People are maybe they're actually reading books again, and people are taking buses and trains, and like I took a train here rather than fly because it's kind of nice to see the landscape change. So slowing down and staying at home sometimes and making your own food and doing this stuff. I'm not nostalgic about the days when we couldn't do anything else, and I use planes like the next person. But making things again and getting up from your desk in the evening, having made something rather than leaving some sort of virtual. I don't know what happens to my data overnight. Does it all go back to Google and they change it and send it back to me in the morning? I don't know. That stuff is out there somewhere, and somebody uses my bits and sends me ads. I mean, I looked at a watch half a year ago. I get fucking watch ads every bloody second on every medium I touch. It's so tedious and boring, and there's no way you can switch it off. So I think I see that with a lot of friends. They are going back to people are drawing, keeping diaries. We need to get back some of our physicality, or else we'll be as virtual and then, of course, as superfluous as all these bits that float out there. So, we are still atoms. And I notice when anybody who comes out there to work with us or to hang out at the workshop, most of us work in digital, and you can't get them out in the evening. They realize, shit, I actually got my hands dirty. I mean, I actually had to use soap. When do you ever use soap anymore? I mean, how dirty you get from a mouse? Nothing. You get data rubbed off on your hands, but you get no dirt, and this is real dirt. I usually have dirty fingernails and dirty elbows and spots on my clothing. And that is actually, weirdly enough, that's something that is desirable, to get dirty again, to get sweaty again, to get your fingers squeezed and, your feet hurt because you've been standing up all day. That seems to be desirable because we're losing it. Just like I ride a bicycle, It's also physical.
Well,
is that weird? I don't think it's weird. It's normal.
It's not weird. I mean, to me, you're preaching to the choir here, But I also think I question and I wonder in terms of, and this is something for the audience to think about, in terms of typographic studies and understanding the letter forms and type. Do you think it's relevant to keep it in a curriculum that if you can
totally,
study?
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm a big one about using grids and stuff, and where I come from. We did those spec sheets for Bertolt where you had millimeter grids and pica grids and whatever, and Cicero grids. You look at the form that you showed in the press, that's the original grid. And you also learn that you don't work in one point because there's wobbles. You work in as big a measure as you possibly can. The bigger the furniture, the bigger the grid elements, the easier the work is, the quicker it goes. So if I see people using a 1.5 baseline grid, I think it fucking sucks. Baseline grids are 6 point or bigger if possible, because it's quicker, it's more stable. It's like using large bricks rather than tiny bricks. I wouldn't want to tile a floor that has these tiny tiles. I'd rather tile a floor that has major tiles. It's quicker. It might also be more stable. That's certainly a discipline you learn, and you also, like I said, you learn to have not all the sizes in. Who needs half sizes? And who needs all this delicate stuff? I mean, I'm all for tracking things properly, but learning to work with very crude tools is a very, very welcome discipline, because I can't distinguish 16.7 million colors. I don't think anybody can, but they're there. And Photoshop frightens me because I can make images that, I can't because I suck at Photoshop, but you can make anything, and making anything to me is frightening. I want fewer choices because it's easier. It's simply, I think, even intellectual laziness to have fewer choices. And you learn from the discipline, and you don't get so worried. I get students or younger designers, oh my God, I've got to do this thing for my client. Oh my God, where do I start? And it's so easy. But it's not easy if you have 16.7 million choices. You get scared shitless out of those choices. And I always sit down with them and said, look, think of a typeface, look at the words, and they look back at you, and then sleep on it, and tomorrow morning you'll have the solution. It's only graphic design, for Christ's sake. It's not winning a Nobel Prize. It's not frightening. And that's the one thing that this teaches you.
Right.
It's not frightening. It's easy once you've learned it. Peter is already beckoning because it's already 10 o'clock.
It's already 10 o'clock. We're finished?
I know her movements,
No.
just slightly the sort of edging forward,
Well,
threatening,
well,
coming off her chair. Soon she's going to hit me over the head.
well, all I can say is, thank you, Erik, for agreeing to do this. I mean, I'm the one who pulled him out of the press and said, this is important. It's an important issue, and it's an important movement to understand again that, going back to letterpress is not being nostalgic. It's not being, oh, I'm cute, I'm crafty, I'm touchy-feely. It is
and
about...
you can't wear sandals when you do that.
You can't wear sandals. And you have to wear black. But it's very important, I think, for us to understand, at least from my perspective as an educator and as a printer, that it's back to the real fundamentals of pre-digital forms, and to understand that that's all you really need sometimes.
Yeah, as long as you understand, and you all understand, this is nothing against digital.
No.
This is not a flight into the past.
No.
This is simply grounding and doing the base work where we all come from and where we all belong, essentially. It's all one universe of type.
And I hope everyone here has an opportunity to experience what Erik and I do often, is letterpress. Thank you.